Success, it has been said, is not the absence of failure, but going from failure to failure without any loss of enthusiasm. My name is BJ Gremillion, and I am the host of the Rush to Fail podcast. This podcast was created to highlight and learn from others who have turned their failures into success in hopes that it will both inspire and encourage others to push through their trials and to not be afraid of short-term failure. Our mantra on this show is to fail often, fail forward, and rush to fail. Welcome to the Rush to Fail podcast. I'm your host, BJ Gremillion, and today I have Brad Woodall with us. Did I say your last name correctly, by the way?
You did. You got it right.
Perfect. I wanted to make sure. So it's funny. Brad has one of those familiar faces where I was trying to remember where we met originally. So he is down the road from me. When I say down the road, he's about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes away from Chattanooga. So he's located in Georgia, and I'll have him kind of tell us about where he lives and all that fun stuff as we get into it. But he's also an investor, a business owner, and he's been in a mastermind that I used to be in as well with Investor Fuel. Great guys there. And so, happy to have you on the show, Brad.
Awesome. Glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Brad was awesome. He reached out. Actually, I reached out today and said, hey, I would love to have you on. He's like, how about today, right now? I'm like, okay, let's go. I love it. Timing was awesome. Well, Brad, if you don't mind, and this is a big reason why I love doing podcasts, is really it's selfish in that I love to get to know other investors and other people, and just their stories and stuff. So maybe, fill us in on, some of your background, maybe your family and how you got into real estate and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So I was born no, I'm just kidding. So it's funny, like before the real estate crash, like I wanted to be a real estate investor, and I got the harebrained idea and I'm 38 years old, about to turn 39. And I got the harebrained idea back in 2007 that I was going to buy a house that's going to be like a live-in flip, right? And so I bought this brand new house in October of 2007. And then we all know what happened a few months later. So I ended up living in that house for like 8 years. I was upside down on it for years. I finally sold it in 2015 for basically what I paid for it. I probably should have held on to it a little bit longer, but hindsight's always 20/20.
Right.
Yeah. But, I had gotten married in 2013, met my wife in 2011. And in 2015, we had our first kid. So we decided to buy another place, a bigger place or whatever. And that was around the time where I started getting interested in like investment real estate again, because it was like post-crash, And I was networking and I was on Bigger Pockets. And funny story, the house that I bought back in 15, I looked at the settlement or the contract, and I saw Ken Corsini's name. You probably know Ken Corsini from Flip or Flop TV and stuff. Ken and I are like buddies now. Actually, his wife, Anita, came by here yesterday by the house. But I saw his name there and I reached out to him and I was like, hey, man, I'm just getting started in real estate, love to connect or whatever. He ended up helping me with my first deal. I started doing direct seller marketing in 2016. In 15, I was like making offers on foreclosures and REOs and losing out like crazy to the hedge funds. Never landed a deal. And then 2016, I got my first deal through a direct mail campaign. And then I was off to the races from there, man. 2017, I ended up doing 7 deals that year. And then in January 2018, I quit my corporate America job. I said sayonara, left a 6-figure corporate job. I was a fraud investigator before that, worked for multiple different companies and banks and stuff like that, and did fraud investigation work. And then left all that. And 2018, I ended up doing like 27 deals my first year, like full time, at it. Good. And just rolling from there, started building out a team in 2018. And here I am today, and got a good team of people that have been with me for years, and doing a new thing this year with the probate house guy stuff and probate resource, kind of niche down in the probate world. That's kind of all I do now. So that's it. We flip, wholesale, owner finance, whatever the deal that comes into our pipeline is best fit for it. That's how we dispo it. Right. So that's the gist of what we do, man.
That is awesome. Yeah. Ken Corsini is so funny how that worked out. So he helped you get started then, huh?
He helped me out with my first deal. And then he and I have done a bunch of other deals together. I don't know if you actually, like you probably saw, I built my house a couple of years ago and did a little mini development here. So he was my partner on that development deal here for my house. We bought a parcel, split it up. He does a lot of that around here, does these little minor subdivisions. So he's a good friend. And him and his wife, Anita, have been good friends with me and my wife for few years now. So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Great couple. Very cool. Small world as you get into the investment world. It
right.
becomes much smaller. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So right now you're working with your team and you mentioned that you're niching down into probate. Why probate, out of curiosity?
Well, so I've done probate deals since probably 2018, right? The same way everybody does them, buy the probate list, send out the mail, whatever. And then over time, I started getting into like doing a lot more online marketing. And I realized that I can blend the probate stuff with the online marketing, the YouTube videos, and all the SEO stuff and all that. So I decided back in 2022 that I was going to just kind of niche down to probate. The market kind of changed at the end of that year, and we were all like kind of wondering, like, what does the future hold for this business, as the interest rates went up. And I decided, well, wait a second. I'm really good at probate deals. My team's really good at probate deals. What we know, we can apply all across the country. I know how to generate leads online. So I went at it with that and, just been pushing forward with this new website, probateresource.com. We generate leads all over the country. And then I started my podcast and all that stuff. And we basically just, partner with people at other places in the country on those leads. But it's all online generated stuff. And I still do my local stuff, right? I still do direct mail around here and do the same thing I've always done. My old website still generates leads from SEO and all that stuff. And we just, keep on trucking that way. So I decided that
Smart.
lead source is never going to go away, right? Probate never goes away. People are always going to die. And we're really good at solving the problems. So why not focus,
Yeah. I mean, I just got off the phone today. I talked to two people that both probate situation. And yeah, I mean, those I agree are some of my favorite. And I picked up on something you mentioned there. So you're doing that now nationwide and you provide leads. Are you partnering with other investors that get those deals and then working with them? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, so we generate the leads through our online marketing efforts, all kinds of different marketing funnels, right? And then we can either partner or I'll sell the lead straight off to the investor, whichever option they want to pick. And because I could bring private money to it if maybe they don't have access to private money or whatever. And then we also naturally, because we're generating a lot of realtor leads, we just sell the leads off to realtors too, and probate attorneys and all that sort of stuff. Anybody who's in that world, right, that might need business, we sell the leads off to them. But everything's managed in-house. All the leads come to us. We talk to the seller first. We gather all their information, and it's always a warm handoff to whoever it is. So
very smart. Love that. We'll have to talk it offline at some point. Would love to learn more about that. So
for sure.
Very cool. Now, probate's interesting. So for those people that don't know much about, what probate is and how that works, essentially typically what occurs is someone has passed away. And then if they did not have like a will or a trust in place, or even if they had a will, they did not have a trust in place, a lot of times that's go through a judge, some process. And so there's going to be heirs involved and, executors. And sometimes it gets really ugly and messy. And it's funny. I was signing a couple closings today at the title company, and she was telling me, funny enough, about a couple crazy power of attorney situations when it comes to probate. So I'm curious, have you had any crazy stories in your experience when it comes to the probate side, where maybe some fraud was involved, or maybe just something where you were able to kind of like, everyone else was like, there's no way this is ever going to work, and you just kind of were able to kind of work through the process and get them there?
Oh man, every deal we do, my phone was just buzzing a second ago. We were supposed to close the deal tomorrow and found out that the probate, there was an issue with the probate, and my attorney's just calling me right now, or the pre-closer, and we just got off the phone right before I got on this. We're on the phone with the seller, and she's pissed because she's like, we're not gonna be able to close tomorrow. Like, screw this. I'm just gonna cancel everything. It's like, no. Like, worst case scenario, we just have to file this document. It'll take a couple weeks and we can close. But best case scenario, the title underwriter will be able to like find a workaround today. So we'll have an answer for you by the end of the day. So don't freak out. And I calmed her down. I normally don't talk to sellers, but I felt like I needed to get on the phone with her and like talk her off the cliff because she was pissed.
Yeah.
But then we get deals. Every deal has hair on it. I mean, it seems like you name it. I've had to do some crazy stuff, track down previous heirs. Fortunately, I've got a great real estate attorney who knows a lot about probate. I've got probate attorneys that I partner with. And,
Yeah.
I could go on all day about all the crazy.
Have you ever come across this where someone's in prison and they have to sell and you have to go to the prison to get them to sign? Have you ever had to do that?
So we had one recently. So but the deal ended up not going through, but I've heard of people having to deal with that. Yeah. With having to go to prison, but I've never had to go there and
Yeah.
actually do it.
Yeah, those are interesting. Yeah, because you just never know. Like, this is probably, there's no way this is going to happen. But I don't think people realize, because a lot of wholesalers, for good reason, get a bad rap, and there's a lot of bad. Just like any industry, there's always going to be like the bad players in the industry. But it's funny because, yeah, like you said, we'll always have a job, because really we're not paid. We're not just in real estate. Like, we're in the business of solving people's problems. And so many, if you just drive down the street, you have no idea how many of those homes are sitting vacant that can't be sold because no one can sign on it. And you got to track down people that might not even know that this thing exists, that live across the country. So that's why probate gets really fun, because it's like, sometimes you got 6 people that have to sign off on it, different brothers, siblings, whatever, that all have to sign. So yeah, probate can get wild. And I'm sure, like you said, we could talk about that forever. But yeah, needless to say, if you can niche down like you have, get really good at that, solving problems, get a good team, you'll never go hungry.
No.
In that industry.
And from a probate perspective, part of the reason we went national is because there's not enough lead volume locally to like run a big business off of it, but the deals are always awesome. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I went national with it. But I mean, I got like, I've got one right now on the market. It's just a simple rehab, and it was a probate deal, out of state executor. And, I'll make $60,000 on it when it finally sells. It was under contract and it fell out last week. The buyer canceled it 2 days before closing, but
those are fun.
so I had to put it back on the market, and that's always the kiss of death, But yeah, they're great deals. So that's why I like to continue doing them. And, you mentioned the crazy ones. I just remember we had one years ago where there was 32 heirs involved. The seller ended up being like, you know what? I'm going to end up getting like $5. So screw that. I'm just going to live in this house. It was funny because this house was down in Atlanta in this like really affluent area. And there was like this street of just McMansions, and then this one tiny little house at the end of the street that the family had never probated like ever. I mean, we had to unroll like 3 generations. And the guy was like, you know what? I'm just going to live here till I die and let somebody else worry about it. Like, I'm just going to keep staying here. And, he just said, screw it, and canceled the deal. Whatever. I mean, if that's what he wants to do.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, you just wonder.
Heirs.
Yeah. After you do this long enough, you start driving around, and your eyes, you just look at things so differently, where you're just like, I wonder what's going on there. I bet you I can figure that one out. And skip tracing now is so much easier to do. And so it's fun. But no, that's awesome. Okay. So let's get back to your family. So does your wife, is she working in the business or stay-at-home mom? Like, what does she do?
So my wife actually works in corporate. She is an agile coach for a pretty big telecommunications company. She's really good at that, loves what she does. She works from home. She's down at the opposite end of the hall from me here in her office on a conference call right now too. So she does that. It's a lot of flexibility. We had talked about early on, hey, I can build this business so you can retire. And she's like, I don't want to. Like, I like what I do. I want to work. And it's nice because, insurance is a lot cheaper through her company than buying it individually, So we do that. And she really has nothing to do with the business, other than, it's funny. Sometimes I'll hear her on her conference calls, like before a meeting, like telling her coworkers about real estate stuff. And I'm like, see, it rubbed off on you. Like you learned a thing or two. That's great.
Yeah, they can't help it when they're married to guys like us, I'm sure. But that's interesting though. So like right off the bat, like I'm always interested in this dynamic, because it's funny you mentioned that about her not wanting to necessarily be retired or whatever. Because like my wife, so we have 5 kids. And I know that right now she's like itching to, like, she's at that point where, we have twin 3-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And so like we're waiting for that opportunity to well, first of all, we're going to move to Chattanooga. So I'm not commuting, but she's just so good at like, staging and the architecture, and she's really good at, finding finishes. So it's like a perfect fit for her, but it's like, she can't get away yet because we feel strongly that obviously we want to, be with the kids and stuff. But then like, she's like, man, the minute that they're able to, be in school and stuff, I'm out. Like this is going to be so much fun to at least do both, and work and raise kids as well. But along those lines, I'm actually curious too. I actually never really asked anyone this question, but how do you guys handle your finances? Do you do it? And I don't know if you've had different iterations, because she's working, you're working. Does it all go to one pot? Have you guys found it's better to each have separate accounts so that you can spend money however you want and not feel guilty about it? How do you guys budget? I'm curious about that.
So when we got married, we combined accounts, so everything goes into one pot, and then she spends it all on Amazon and I spend it all on tools. And no, it all goes to one pot. We combined bank accounts years ago. I mean, we still have like our individual like credit cards that we've always had, but we don't carry balances on those. And we have one kind of like, central, we put everything on our one Amazon card every month, and that gets paid off every month. And, all our money goes into one pot. And then really like my business is an asset generating machine to generate, deals. Like I handle the real estate piece of it. Right. And, so that's kind of how our dynamic works. And, like I said, when we got married, we combined accounts and done it that way.
Very
I mean, it's kind of that way I was raised, right, in a Christian household. And, you do one account and everything's, the couples, like you're a couple, you're one. So,
yeah, and it's interesting because, like that's how we did it. We combined, but it's funny every time that I would bring up the word budget, like, and really it was more so because I spend more than she does, which is funny because like, she came from a background where her parents were a lot more loose with money, and then mine were very tight. And so it's funny because it's like opposite now, where like I'm a little bit loosey goosey when it comes to spending stuff on Amazon, especially or whatever.
Right.
And then she's a little more disciplined in that regard. And so I would bring it up almost selfishly, like, hey, we need to budget or whatever. Like, I need your help, like we got to figure this out. And then she would take that as like, oh man, like, are you saying that I need to, so it was always like a little weird.
Right.
And then I think it finally clicked where she's like, look, pay me a salary. I'm going to get paid this much. And for me and the kids, and then you get a salary. And then that way we don't have to ask, like, what did you spend money on? Like, why don't we have any money in the account? It's like, so we still have like, joint, but we also have separate. And so that's how we've been able to, I guess, navigate that, just because I hated that word, the B word in marriage. That was like, oh man, those nights were rough.
Yeah, we've never run like I've never been a super tight budgeter, but I always know how much money I have, and I manage our money. I always know the outlays, and we've always been like high income earners. So, and we've just, never, outlived our means. I mean, occasionally, maybe one month we're going to be over, but like for the most part, we try to live within our means, and that's how we kind of manage things. But I've never been like, I'm not that guy that like manages down to the penny. It's like, I know what I'm going to have to spend. We keep, money in savings, and we make sure we've got equity in our houses and our cars are paid for, and, like all that stuff. So, from that front, we're good. And actually the Amazon piece, I joke about that, but we use that for all of our finances. Like personally, we have an Amazon rewards credit card. So we get the Amazon rewards on it. Everything goes on that card every month, like every expense. And then my business Amex is tied to the Amazon account. And, I spend anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a month on the business Amex. So we get every month, she gets like, I say she, I use a little bit of it, but she gets, that's her like play money, is she gets, $500-$600 in Amazon points to buy stuff off Amazon,
So cool. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And it's been fun now that we do a lot more flipping because we're doing turnkey. And so we do a lot more flips. And so our Home Depot account is just going berserk. And so, it's been fun to be like, okay, cool. Like those add up really fast for that very reason. That's why real estate is so fun because, you get a bank up on those points quite a bit. So
that's right.
Very cool. So that was just kind of a random question, but
sure.
Yeah. So this is another question that I guess I've been curious about lately. And I'm curious if you've put thought into this. So as a real estate investor, obviously there's endless amount of opportunity and deals that you can buy. And we really could work 24/7 if we wanted to, or if, we didn't have other responsibilities. So I'm curious, do you guys have kind of a goal in mind for like, when we hit this point, then this, or has that changed over the lifespan of your marriage? Like, have you guys realized, hey, maybe we'll kind of cut back on work, or how does that look like for you with work-life balance?
So I'm like super ADD. So I've thought about that, but I don't know that I could ever like retire, because I see my dad. My dad retired years ago, but then now he's doing consulting and he does like 2 gigs a year because he stays home and plays golf a bunch. And then after 3 months, he's like, you know what? I'm going to go take a consulting gig for, a couple months and go do that and give me something to do, keep my mind occupied. My dad's almost 70. And so I feel like I'll do this till the day I die, because real estate it's something you can do till the day you die, right? And then I'll always be building passive income and using that to do what we want to do. And eventually maybe my wife can stop working, and I've actually been trying to get her to do that as a consultant, and I've been planting that seed for years. And finally, I think she's starting to come around the idea, because what she does for a living is super in demand in the corporate world as an agile coach. And she could charge companies, $250,000 to do an implementation for, a rollout for agile each, and easily handle 4 or 5 of them by herself, but she's not an entrepreneur. Like, she doesn't think that way. So for me to explain that to her, she's like, no. Like, I'm going to work my job and get my salary and da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, but you can do this and work less time and make more. And she's like, no, that scares me. It's like, okay, that's fine. So I just let her go at her own pace. And she's starting to come around to it. The other day she says, hey, my friend, which her friend does consulting too, for one of the big, I think like Deloitte or something like that. And her friend's like talking about quitting, like her best friend. And she's like, told her friend, she's like, hey, you can manage the, market, like the networking and get clients, and I'll just do this. And I said, see, there you go. You just got to find the right people to fill in the spot. And right. So it's coming around, but I don't ever pressure her to do that. Whenever she feels like she wants to make that decision, that's fine. But she loves what she does right now. And I like what I do, and I'll keep doing this and just keep doing what I'm doing, and, keep doing deals till I die, because I enjoy it. It's always different.
Same.
So, and I don't work a ton. I'm not a workaholic. Like, there's some days like I'll probably call it for the day after we're done with this, and just, be done for the day. It's a beautiful day. Go outside. My son gets home from school at 3. And, this business also, you saw what happened in my personal life. And, my youngest son battled with cancer for 1.5 years, and then he passed away on February 20th of brain cancer. This business gave me the freedom and the flexibility to be able to take him to his radiation and his chemo, and just take lots of trips last year and spend a lot of great quality time together, to live life to the fullest. Because we knew when he was first diagnosed, we knew it was terminal. So we like made all the memories and everything we could last year. Like, we did everything we could and lived life to the fullest. And I'm so thankful that this business and what we do gave me that freedom and the flexibility to do that. And now this year I can kind of, I had my business on autopilot, let's call it, for a little bit. My team was kind of running things. I wasn't like thriving, but I was, just steady Eddie. And now it's like, all right, I've got this craziness in my life behind me, and let's now I want to work and to do something. So this year I'm planning on doing a lot, this year.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man. Yeah. So awesome. Yeah. That how things work out, that you're able to have both of you, having jobs where you're able to, step away when needed. And I wonder if you don't mind sharing, about your son. I know that obviously has to be a monumental, life-changing event that you don't wish on any parent, especially, once you have kids, it's tough. So I'm just curious, like, how did you guys find out, and how did that all?
So September 13th, 2022 was the day. He stayed home from school that day, said he was sick. And then I was like, no, you're like you're playing around, like, you little turkey, like, you need to go back to school. And then he took a nap that day. And this was weird. And the doctors thought this was super weird because typically these brain tumors kind of come on a little bit slowly. His came on very acutely. And he woke up from a nap that day. And the best way to describe it was that he was like a drunk 5-year-old. He was slurring his words and couldn't stand up straight. And just, so we immediately were like, yeah, something's wrong. And we took him to urgent care, and they immediately sent us down to, I'm in Atlanta, so they sent us to Scottish Rite Hospital in Atlanta, the Children's Hospital. And they said something neurological is going on. They did some tests, did some MRIs, some CT scans. They thought it was just some sort of, they saw inflammation in his brain, and they said, okay, well, this is maybe just something viral or whatever. So they sent us home on steroids. And then after he finished the steroids, or as he started finishing steroids, the symptoms started coming back. And then we're like, okay, something's wrong. Then they said, okay, well, this might be a brain tumor. This inflammation we're seeing on the MRI might be a brain tumor. Let's do a biopsy. So they, immediately did surgery, went in and did a biopsy. And, he was diagnosed with a grade 4 diffuse midline glioma. It's called a DMG. And it's in the middle of his brain. And it's a diffuse tumor. So it's like infiltrating tentacles that like spreads and infiltrates all the tissue. So it's not like a mass that you can just go in and cut out and remove. Plus, it was on his thalamus in the middle of his brain. So there's a lot of potential collateral damage if you go in there and try to remove it. You probably won't get it all. And, there's dangers to other complications. So they started us on chemo, and then it spread very quickly. We did some testing when we did that biopsy. And there's this program called Precision Medicine. And in fact, I posted today about buying, by the time this airs, this won't be a thing, but Jersey Mike's is sponsoring this company called The Cure. And they basically implemented the Precision Medicine program at Scottish Rite here in Atlanta. And they do all this genetic testing on the tissue, and they can determine all the different genetic mutations that this tumor has and laser target treatment to that specific mutation. That's how cancer treatment works today. Is you go like laser focused, and you take inhibitors and that sort of stuff. So they were able to determine that, he had this specific mutation, and we had a medication that we put him on, and he was stable for a while. But ultimately, these tumors are the type he had, eventually will progress. And it did in first week of January of this year of 2024. We noticed symptoms of progression. We tried to start radiation again. He had done 30 rounds of radiation last January through March. But it was just, once it's progressed, that's it. So he kind of went downhill pretty quick and passed away on February 20th. So it was a rough January and February, lots of doctor's appointments and hospital stays and MRIs and MRIs and MRIs and more MRIs, and just, it was craziness. But that, that type of tumor only affects like about 1,000 kids a year throughout the world. It's not super common. And it's almost fatal in every single case. So, it only affects kids, really. I mean, some adults can get it, but it's very rare. Most of the time it's kids, and there's no real cure. So out of this, I was talking to my accountant the other day. I'm going to start a foundation and raise some money to give donations to these labs that are trying to find a cure for this, because it's so rare. The only way that the labs that are willing to do research on this and try to find a cure are just getting money from grants, because they don't get money from big pharma, because it's such a small population. There's no ROI for big pharma, right? So I'm going to start a foundation to raise money to help. Maybe we can save a life of another kid who has this, and maybe there's another family that doesn't have to go through what we went through. And that's my way of giving back. Or, that's my plan. So.
Good for you guys, man. That's so cool. Yeah. I can only imagine like the amount of stress that it has to put on like a marriage too. Right. So, I mean, You're trying to keep it together for the other kids. And did you guys notice it was difficult for the other kids, feeling like, hey, all the attention's going towards, him and not us? Did you guys kind of see that as well? Or
yeah, my oldest son, we definitely noticed that right early on. And then, our Carter, who passed away, he was a very like happy-go-lucky, super positive kid, and he went through a little bout of depression at the beginning because he physically wasn't able to do what he used to be able to do, but he adapted very quickly, And it was crazy because all of his friends at school adapted really quickly, and he started chasing him around with it. He had to use a walker because he couldn't balance. So he had a walker and he chased the kids around his school. Everybody loved him. There was 250 people at his funeral at the beginning of this month. Kids from the school came, the whole staff, the faculty, everybody came. It was awesome. And that was cool, seeing that. So for it to happen to him is awesome because he had the personality to deal with it. Our other son obviously noticed some attention, but we tried to have days with him where we would have a Mason day and, hang out with him and stuff. And we also got him in therapy last year, mainly to talk through some of this. And then, so he was comfortable enough. So then when the day did come that, his brother did pass away. So now we're taking him every 2 weeks to therapy. And in terms of our marriage, obviously affected our marriage. Things were tough. Everybody grieves differently. Fortunately, but unfortunately, we knew this was coming. So we had people were like, "Oh, why are you not grieving so much now?" And it's like, well, I already had time to. I knew this was coming. We had time to grieve. We had time to process all of this, and you process differently. And so we read a lot of books, and then we're kind of each going to therapy separately. And then whenever we're kind of done with our individual stuff, my wife and I will probably go to just sort of marriage therapy together. We did therapy years and years ago, and that was great for our marriage. And we'll probably go see that lady again just to after we've done our individual thing, kind of come back together. And obviously our faith has grown. I've always been a man of faith, and it's grown, more, and our faith has grown together. So, but it's not easy, but you just try to stay positive and just, do what you can and let each other process separately, because people are going to grieve differently, and you have to let them process things the way they're going to process things. And you process things, and you can't judge someone else by how they process things. We all process it differently. So
true, man. That's such good advice. All of that. Yeah. Lots to digest there and learn from. And it's interesting too, because I saw a clip. I think it was Dave Ramsey. And he was talking about, he's like, everyone throws out the statistic that 50% of marriages fail. And he's like, that's not true if you take out, don't have sex before you're married, don't have, or don't have kids before you're married, don't get married and before 21, I think it was, or before 20, graduate high school. And then I think it was get a job. It was very, not anything crazy. And he's like, oh, and then worship together, and have a common faith. And he's like, if you do that on a consistent basis, regular church attendance and, all those things that I just mentioned, he's like, it's actually above 90%, the success rate. So I was like, man, that's so interesting. I had never heard that, because you always hear all these negative statistics. And I'm sure it's the same thing with people that go through grief, of losing a child, or, I'm sure that there's a lot of, people that it just fizzles out. But what you just said there was no, we're super proactive in what we're doing. We're doing all the things that we can control, where it's hey, we're going to therapy, we're focusing on our kids, we're focusing on our faith, we're focusing on commonality, we're giving each other space, we're all those things. So I can only help but think, okay, well, shoot, your chances just went up pretty much to 99%, where it's you do those fundamentals and it'll work out. It's not going to be perfect by any means. I'm sure you'll have crazy days, but yeah, it's just interesting how simple life can be. It's hard. But it doesn't have to be that hard. A lot of times we make it a lot harder than it, I guess, needed to be,
Exactly. Right. And, reading all the self-help books and stuff I have over the years probably helped me through all of this, and kind of gave me some insight on how to stay positive through all this. And some of that rubbed off on my wife's very much a pessimistic person. It's funny, we're complete opposites, right? But the opposites attract, right? Yep. I'm the pie in the sky, visionary guy. And my wife's I had her take the integrator quiz one time, and she's 98% integrator, and I'm 97% visionary. And we're opposites, funny. But that's good. Early on, we recognized, and going through marriage counseling years ago kind of helped too, which is we're different people and we complement each other's skill sets. And you just have to realize that that we're not the same, and you can't expect the other person to be the same, and you got to learn how to complement each other, and you have to communicate when you are frustrated, and sometimes that's easy and sometimes that's difficult, and you take it one day at a time. And it's crazy. In the middle of all this, my wife came to me one day and she said, I want to have another kid. And I was like, what?
Wow.
So we, while we were going through all this with Carter, we tried for another kid, and we're going to have a little girl in August. And
no way.
Yeah, she's pregnant.
So
she's doing
cool.
August. So, and it was cool. The boys got to pick out her name right before Carter passed. The week before he passed, they got to pick out her name. We gave them like 5 different names that we had narrowed it down to, and said, all right, you guys pick what her name's going to be. And that was super awesome. And, people were like, are you crazy? Like, it's like, yeah, well, I mean, we thought about it a lot. I even asked my therapist about it. I was like, is this crazy? And she's like, well, kind of, but like, if you guys talk about it and you're okay with it, then, go with it, but make sure you talk about this first. Cause it's weird how the world works. Cause back in 22, I was going to get a vasectomy. Like I said, we were done at 2, and I had met with the urologist, and she's like, look, just let me know what day you want to do the surgery. I'm here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It was like, kind of like, hey, just pop in and get this done.
Yeah, factory. Yep.
And I was like, okay, interesting. And then I got busy building our house, because I GC'd our house build, full custom build. And then Carter's health issues happened. I mean, we moved in this house July 7th, and September 13th, his health issues started. So like, I told myself, I'm going to get the vasectomy after we're done with house build, because I didn't have like a week where I could just take off from this. It was a lot.
Yeah. And
then his health issues started happening. And then obviously I'm not going to do that in the middle of all that. And it's funny how God works in this world. Like, I had some hesitancy to get a vasectomy. Like I was just kind of putting it off a little bit, and then now it's like, okay, now I know why. Because he had this plan for us to, have a little girl. So, and maybe that's our like healing mechanism for what we're going through. And so it's cool.
Man, that's so crazy. Yep. God is in the details. That is for sure. And that's a perfect example of that. What was the name that they picked?
Charlotte is going to be her name.
Awesome. So cute. Yep. Oh man, that's exciting. I didn't realize you guys were pregnant. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, that was as amazing as I was expecting, this conversation with you, and would love to obviously continue it, in the future too. But
for sure,
at the end of the podcast, typically what we'll do, we'll just ask, 2 or 3 questions that I ask everyone. And so they're softball questions. You don't have to worry about preparing. But as far as I know that you have read a lot of books, and I'm sure podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So is there one that, the last year or whatever that really has helped you?
Gosh.
Or podcast or whatever that you're listening to these days?
Man, is there one? I don't know. I can't think of one. Goodness.
Or what's one book that you've recommended to a lot of people that you're like, man, this book was killer. It's in my top 3 or 5 or whatever. Book, self-help, business, any of that.
I mean, obviously, everybody recommends Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm not going to do that.
Right? I know. I was just about to say you're not allowed. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm looking over at my bookcase right here.
Wouldn't that be awesome to be Kiyosaki and be like, every single investor has read my Purple Bible, and every single investor is like, yeah, it all started when I read his Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm like, that has got to be the most ego-inducing, like, feeling of all time. Like, everyone's read my book. So
he's got an ego. He came to, I missed that Fuel meeting, but he came to Fuel, and everyone's like, he is not what we expected at all.
He's definitely not a Democrat. I don't think he's a big supporter of Biden.
Gosh, let's see here. I'm looking at all my books, man. There's so...
I know there's so many to choose from now.
What is a good one? Gosh, I don't even know, man. I got so many here.
That's fine. I'm sure you can stick with a good word as well.
So current podcasts, I've been actually really into, and I've gotten away from like business stuff, but the Sean Ryan show, he's a former Navy SEAL guy. He has a lot of really cool guests on a wide array of topics. I've been listening to his stuff a lot lately.
Cool.
I mean, he's conspiracy theorist to like, obviously people dealing with baggage from military and operators that, you know, gone through a lot and how their mental battles afterwards. So that's actually very helpful to listen to that. A lot of these guys that have gone through a lot of mental battles after combat, a lot of these high level operators listening to their
His
story.
name is what again?
Sean Ryan, the Sean Ryan Show.
Okay.
He's actually in Tennessee. He's in what's the ritzy town right outside of Nashville? Franklin. He lived in Franklin. And he's a former SEAL, and he's got a really cool show. Yeah.
See, that's why I asked the question. Honestly, it's selfish because I'm always looking for like, what's another podcast I can listen to or book or whatever. So anyways, cool. I'm going to check that one out. Yeah. So if you were able to, you know, go back to the beginning of your career, you know, let's say what's a bit of advice that you would give yourself now that you've had all this experience, you know, over the years, what's some experience or some advice that you would give yourself?
Keep more deals, hold more properties. Right, everybody.
You know
says
how many
that.
investors have said that, like, and I'm the very first to be in that line. It drives me crazy that I was so short sighted.
Yeah, and so keep more properties, and don't forget about like why you're doing this. Especially when you get in these big groups, like with these mastermind groups. There was a period where I went in and you get in these groups and guys are pounding their chests and I'm doing more deals and I'm doing more deals and blah, 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 blah. And the team, they're like, oh, I've got a COO and I need this and I need all these people. Push yourself, but run your business the way you want to run your business. Like, don't let all these other guys tell you how to run your business. Get ideas from them, but like, just because you know, so-and-so over here has 13 employees doesn't mean you need to have 13 employees. Like, tailor your business around what you want, not what someone else, how they're running their business, right? And you may change your mind in 5 years and decide that, hey, maybe I do want to expand the team and do this. But like, I scaled my business back a couple years ago and let some employees go and kind of scaled down and niche down and wanted to do less deals because I was chasing all the things, doing all the different marketing channels and spending all this money on marketing and doing all these things. And they all work. But then I was like, you know what? Like, let's just do like one thing and just do that really, really, really well. So The One Thing, that book's right up there too. That's a good book. The One Thing.
That's the book that I've referenced this year more than anything. I read it again at the beginning of the year and I was like, man, I needed this so bad. Because you're right. That is my, both things that you mentioned actually. So I started a turnkey business and I tell every person I work with, like, you will regret if you have one bad year and you just want to sell, and you want to make 20 grand because you got equity or whatever. Hold it. Just hold on to that sucker for as long as you can, and I promise you'll look really smart in a decade from now. So just hold. And then, like to your point, the masterminds are so tricky. They're so good, but so bad.
Oh yeah, they're great. I've learned so many nuggets over the years, and now a lot of the mastermind meetings, when I go to them, I go for the camaraderie. Like a lot of these guys, we've all been together for years. And I go to recharge my batteries and get around these guys. Cause at home, I have friends that are entrepreneurs, but they're in different businesses. So to get together with guys that are doing what you're doing is nice. And, I like that, but also just making sure that you're being true to yourself and running your business way and then find your spot in the business. Like if you find what you're good at and keep that slot open in the business. You can still be the CEO of the business and also be the acquisitions guy, or also be the dispo guy, or also be, the accountant or whatever, right? Like, don't give up all the hats because everyone says that you need to take all the hats off and completely remove yourself from the business. Figure out what you like doing, delegate and hire out all the rest of it, and keep doing what you like doing, because that's going to recharge your batteries. Also, I'll add to that, one of the things I this was like my give at one of the mastermind meetings recently was like, in your personal life, don't give up things that give you energy just because everyone says you should delegate everything and it's not the highest and best use of your time. For instance, I love landscaping in my yard, and like I used to own a landscaping business. I ran it on the side when I was in corporate America for years and sold it before our son was born. I love, like, I'm a grass nerd. Like, I real mow my yard, and like I'm about to, actually, I was just networking with a buddy of mine who has a big Instagram channel about lawns, and we're about to do some collaborative stuff on my own yard and make it like so I had like subbed that out a few years ago and had somebody start mowing my grass, and I like felt empty. And I was like, wait a second, like that's my therapy time when I'm out on that mower, and like it's mindless and I can focus and think about things and strategize about life and process things. Why did I give this up? So I took it back and I started doing it again. And I love doing it. And, it's not the highest and best use of my time. I could pay a landscaper to mow my grass. I can afford that, but I enjoy doing it. So I'm going to keep doing it until I don't enjoy doing it anymore.
Such good advice. Yeah. Cause we're talking about masterminds, but I think everyone else, the universal one is Instagram and Facebook. And you think, oh, this influencer does this, so I got to catch up and do that. It's like, no, man, we're all so unique and so different. There's only one of us, So why in the world would you try and be like someone else? Because you were blessed with totally different talents and gifts, and you're one of one. So just embrace that and find what works for you. And that's a lot easier said than done for someone like me, because I want to do everything. But man, such good advice. All of it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Love it. Yeah. Well, Brad, is there a way that people can find you and your business? I don't know if you're active on like social media, or if they have a probate situation, where do they go?
Yeah, so you can go to probatehouseguy.com, and there's like a contact me thing, and it goes to me. So you can go to probatehouseguy.com, and then I've got a podcast, a Probate House Guy podcast, and I have a YouTube channel for Probate House Guy. So you can check that out if you want to subscribe to that channel. I put out a lot of helpful content for investors on that channel. A lot of really good stuff. And then I launched the podcast, also do the same, just give back nuggets. Cause I learned like everything I know through books and podcasts. Like that's how I learned, and then ultimately joining masterminds. Right. So I'm just giving back now, because what we do is not like rocket science. Like it just,
right.
It's not that hard.
Yeah. It just takes lots of experience. You got to bang your head against every wall, right. And you're like, hey, I've done all those mistakes. Just listen, do this. It'll be better. Yep. And just trust me. So love that you're doing that. And so, yeah, if anyone has a probate situation that they're stuck on, or they know of someone in that situation, definitely reach out to Brad. You just want to reach out to someone that niches down and knows that. And he's obviously national now. So super cool. Yeah. And we'll have to talk at some point about that as well. So
yeah, I'll come up to Chattanooga, because my buddy lives in Chattanooga too. So I'll come up and maybe we can all have lunch together or something. So.
Oh yeah, dude. I love it. Cool. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show, Brad. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, BJ. Awesome. Appreciate you having me.
I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this podcast. It's the best part of my week. I love learning from others' failures. And let's be honest, failures are way more enjoyable when you're not the one experiencing them in the moment. If you or someone you know has a story or experience to share, we would love to have you on the show. And please do not forget to like and share this podcast with anyone you feel would get value from the experiences shared on this show. Until the next show, remember to fail fast and fail often. Thanks for listening to the Rush to Fail podcast.